If you live in Sydney or have ever visited, you'll know we've got beautiful beaches and a beautiful harbour here in Sydney. We've also got one of the most expensive property markets in the world. The current median price for a house in Sydney is $1.6 million as at August 2024. That's an increase of 7.8% in the last year. What that's meant is that there is a lot of investors and people leaving Sydney in search of more affordable property markets in other terrific states of Australia, particularly the capital cities of Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth. Now, for a long time, those particular capital cities weren't actually doing much as far as their property markets were concerned. They were fairly stable and fairly stagnant. What's happened though, really, since COVID and the Sydney property price took off, is that property prices in those other terrific cities of Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth have also taken off now as well. But they remain affordable. The current median house price in Brisbane, for example, is $976,000, which is an amazing increase of 16% over the last year. The same increase for Adelaide, it has a median price of $929,000. The market that really shot the lights out, though, has been Perth, which has gone up 23% in the last year. However, so we've got a median price there of $852,000. Still affordable relative to Sydney's $1.6 million median price. So we have investors coming to us all the time who are looking to find out what they need to do in order to get into these other markets because Sydney has become so unaffordable. And really the winning team that any investor needs to be able to get into these, to get a great deal on a great property in these other interstate markets are the following things. The first thing you're going to need is a network of property agents on the ground in the market that you target, whether that be Brisbane, Adelaide, or Perth. If you, for example, are looking at Brisbane, you need to have a network of contacts on the ground there who can bring you opportunities, preferably off market, rather than waiting for them to be up on realestate.com. There are plenty of properties in the market, basically Australia-wide, that change hands before they ever hit the internet. And generally speaking, they're going to be a better deal than once they get onto the internet. And so whatever you can do to build those contacts, you'll end up with a better transaction and hopefully a lower price. The second thing you're going to need to do is property research and due diligence. Now, you can obviously, there's plenty of resources out there. Many of them you need to pay for in order to do your research in terms of which market has not only had the best performance, but which market is likely, for all the important factors, to have the best performance moving forward. So obviously you can either do that yourself, the property research and the due diligence, or you can outsource that to a property professional. After that, you're going to, once you've focused in on a particular area and probably focused in on a particular property, the next person you're going to need is going to be a very, very reliable property building inspector. So whether it's an existing property that you're looking at, or whether it happens to be a new property that you're looking at, a building inspector is going to be invaluable in terms of letting you know exactly what the structural status is of that property. Generally speaking, obviously with a new property, the structural status of the property is A-class, it's brand new, there's nothing wrong with it. In that situation, generally the building inspector is more pointing out minor issues, cosmetic issues and things like that that may need to be rectified. In terms of existing properties though, a building inspector is critical because he'll be there to not only point out whether there's going to be any major structural defects with the property that you don't know about, but also the minor defects. Obviously, if there's any major defects, we'd recommend that you steer clear. But minor things, they're an opportunity to add value, which you could be quite prepared to do. The next person you're going to need is a property conveyancer or solicitor. Now, in Australia, the regulations and the laws around purchasing property vary from state to state. And generally speaking, most property conveyancers and solicitors are only licensed or registered to deal in the state that they're in. In other words, a Sydney-based solicitor will generally only do New South Wales. A Brisbane-based solicitor will generally only do Queensland. So depending on which area you're looking to purchase in, let's imagine it's Adelaide that you've chosen, Adelaide being the number one performing economy in Australia at the moment. You'll need an Adelaide-based conveyancer or solicitor to be able to look after the paperwork in terms of the contract, moving the property out of the seller's name and into your name. So very, very important to be finding that person, a reliable conveyancer or solicitor in the state, because they'll be able to point out all of the subtle differences between purchasing and investing in property in that particular state, as well as obviously all the particulars about the particular contract that you've been presented in relation to the property. The next person that you're going to need is absolutely critical, and that is a really professional and reliable property manager. So let's imagine that everything has proceeded smoothly up until this point, and you've actually purchased this property that you're looking to lease out, and you obviously want to attract a good tenant who's going to look after the property. So under those circumstances, a good local property manager is absolutely critical, because they will not only make sure that your new important asset is being looked after well, they'll also make sure that the tenant that they're introducing to the property are going to be good tenants in terms of, as I said, looking after the property, as well as doing important things like paying rent on time, and so they're an important part of the chain. Also, in relation to investing interstate, as I mentioned before, a good property manager is critical. The other thing that's critical is really top-notch landlord's insurance. So a landlord's insurance policy is different to that for a standard house that you may be living in. From the perspective, it has particular wording that basically protects the landlord against any damage that the tenant may either accidentally or maliciously cause to the property. So it's basically a supercharged property insurance policy, in that it's designed specifically for an investment property and designed to protect the landlord in that case. The final thing you'll need is that you're probably wanting to take advantage of the tax laws here in Australia to be able to get some rebates in relation to your investment property. One of the ways that you can do that is with depreciation. In relation to new property, you can depreciate all of the fixtures and fittings as well as the building. In the case of an existing property, you can only depreciate the building these days. Either way, you're going to need a depreciation report. So you're going to need to find someone who's going to be able to provide that for you. So they're all of the people in your winning dream team to be able to provide you with an amazing outcome as far as interstate property is concerned. Obviously, you can do that, or you can call on a professional provider like ourselves at Liberty Property Strategies to be able to help you with that, which would obviously be our pleasure. Now, one of the things I just wanted to finish up on is I spoke earlier about the high median prices, no matter whether you're in Sydney or in these other great capital cities. What a lot of people don't realise though is that there are still affordable opportunities in each of these particular state capitals. They're not going to be within a 30-minute drive of the CBD. They're going to be an existing property, but it's going to be within an hour's drive of a major capital city like Adelaide, Brisbane or Perth. A property, if we say a 4-bedroom home on a nice piece of land up to 10 years old, can be still acquired for $450,000, which is absolutely amazing. If you consider a situation where you've perhaps got a limited deposit, a deposit on that, 10% deposit's obviously only $45,000. That could be either equity or cash. And then you've got obviously the closing costs to go on top of that in terms of stamp duty and legals and things like that. But super affordable, and that's a property that's going to rent very, very well. That $450,000 property is probably going to rent for $500, maybe $550 a week, because there's a shortage of quality rental property right around Australia. So this is one of the other reasons that interstate property has been and will be into the future so attractive, particularly to people who live in Sydney or were thinking about investing in Sydney. The fact that you can get something that's so much more affordable in these other areas, you've just got to put together that team that I mentioned before, or we'd be very, very happy to help you. Remember that none of this is personal advice because we don't know your personal circumstances. And if you have liked the content that we've presented today, then by all means give us a like and feel free to subscribe to our channel. And next week there'll be more great information like this.